we are now ready, ladies and gentlemen, for our fourth and final panel on the topic, the following topic, from MSCA impact to future challenges of young researchers. So this panel is focusing on the future challenges and career demands that will be made of young researchers, and how MSCA can maybe help to prepare researchers for those new conditions. So we're talking about future job requirements that we don't yet know, future skills that will be necessary for researchers. And honestly, this is a big question. I mean, already now researchers are under a lot of pressure. Researchers are under a lot of pressure to do many things and not just their research. So there is a lot of pressure in terms of grant writing, in terms of career management and development, the whole precariousness of researchers' academic positions and the research positions makes their life a lot more complicated. We heard this morning about the whole culture of publish and perish, so which in a way makes the job of being a researcher harder. And I read an article in Nature the other day about the fact that researchers now are in so much tougher position than their supervisors were when they were young researchers. So we're in a challenging situation now, and what will be in the future, and how we can better prepare and help and support researchers in that process is the topic of this panel. We have three panelists, and I look forward to introducing them now and to hearing their presentations. From the European Commission, Claire Morel, who's the head of the MSCA unit. Our second speaker will be Cecilia Cabello Valdis from the Fundación Española para la Ciencia y Tecnología, so the Spanish Foundation for Science and Technology, and Professor Leandra Vranjes-Markic from here in Croatia from the University of Split. So let me introduce our first speaker. So Claire Morel is, as I mentioned, the head of the MSCA actions at the European Commission. Before this, she was the head of the Unit for International Cooperation in DG EAC, with a particular focus on the international dimension of the Erasmus program. And previously, she was involved in the Tempus program for higher education modernization and worked for the European Training Foundation. Ms. Morel, welcome to the conference, and we're looking forward to your perspective on the future challenges that young researchers will face and how we can best support them through EU programs. The floor is yours.
Hello, I hope that you can all hear me. And I'm really, as the head of the Skłodowska-Curie Action Unit in the European Commission, I'm particularly thrilled and glad to be with you today. This is a particularly important moment for us. First, because of the choice of the topic of today's discussion, and because we in the European Commission are preparing the new program, the new MSCA actions that will be launched at the beginning of next year in the framework of the Horizon Europe program. I'm asked to put a particular focus today on intersectoral cooperation, so cooperation between academia and non-academia, which has been a particularly important highlight or focus of the MSCA program so far. But before doing that, I'd like to remind a few facts about the MSCA, because I've heard a lot of interesting comments, discussions, praise, and sometimes complaints about the MSCA. This is particularly useful because, as I said, we are currently preparing the new program. We are in the full preparation of the work program. We are discussing with what we call a shadow program committee, so representative from the member states, and everything that you have said today will be very useful for us. So a few highlights or a few, let's say, the highlights or the main focus of what are the MSCA. We talked a lot about individual researchers. We talked about the mobility of researchers, but the MSCA is much more than that. Of course, it's a program that supports mobility, training, career development of researchers from all over the world. In fact, it's the most international action under Horizon Europe, on the Horizon 2020, and we hope it will continue to be the most international program under Horizon Europe, and it does so by developing excellent doctoral programs, offering postdoctoral fellowships, and also collaborative projects. We put a particular emphasis on cooperation with the non-academic sector, and we very strongly promote the participation of business, industries, SMEs, NGOs, governmental sector, etc. It's a program which is open to researchers at all stages of their career. As you've heard already, it's a bottom-up program that can contribute to any sector of research. It also promotes very attractive working and employment conditions. So researchers involved in the MSCA are provided with good conditions, a working contract. They contribute to social and employment benefits. It stimulates, as I say, international, intersectoral, interdisciplinary cooperation. It has an impact not only on researchers, but also on institutions. Here you see the figures and our targets for the current program between 2014 and 2020. Those are the number of researchers that we want to fund and support through the program, more than 65,000 researchers, including 25,000 PhDs. And we will have as well developed and funded more than 1,000 doctorate programs in the current programming period. As I said, and we've heard it since this morning, the MSCA have a very positive impact on the career of researchers who are involved in this. Around 95% are employed after the MSCA fellowship. Those are the results of a number of surveys that we have carried out, and the midterm evaluation that was also carried out a few years ago. About 80% of all the fellows involved in the program are satisfied with the innovative research training, the professional development opportunities that they were offered while they were involved in the program. 60% believe that without MSCA, it would have taken them much more longer to move in their career. And interestingly as well, around 40% were promoted to more senior position after the MSCA fellowship, and they attribute this to their participation in MSCA. The impact or the positive impact of the program goes well beyond the individual researchers, because it's a program that has a strong footprint on the institution. It promotes good practice, notably in terms of transparent, merit-based recruitment at institution and also national levels. Very often the good practice and the requirements which are imposed in the framework of MSCA projects are translated into new rules within institutions, and we have also cases where these rules were translated as well in national rules, national legislation. It has a very participating in MSCA has as well a very stimulating and long-lasting impact on institutions, on their on the creation of long-lasting international partnerships, and on stimulating internationalization strategies, in improving the attractiveness of and the competitiveness of the institutions joining the program. Since the topic of this panel, the panel discussion in which I'm taking part now, is about cross-sectoral mobility, I looked back at the interim evaluation at a recent data that we received from the questionnaires which our fellows have to fill in at the end of their fellowship. And we see that up until now, clearly, the MSCA has really helped enhancing collaboration between academia and non-academia. About 50% of MSCA fellows benefit from some sort of cross-sectoral mobility during their fellowship. we see that 19% of the ITN fellows, so those postdoctoral researchers, have moved thanks to their fellowship to the non-academic sector, and 28% of RISE fellows, so RISE is the exchange program, when they leave their institution, usually it's to move to the non-academic sector. However, the participation of non-academic institutions, organizations in the MSCA is still quite low. Today, it's about 26% of all the organizations working in the framework or benefiting from MSCA are from businesses, including SMEs and other public bodies. It has increased over the years, but it's still low. And we clearly see that we need to do something to enhance this participation. And I'll come to this in a minute. We see as well that the share of academic corporate cross publication in the framework of MSCA is higher than the world average. When we talk to employers, to organizations from the non-academic sector, when we see the result of our survey, we hear that there are still a number of barriers to stronger cross-sectoral mobility and cooperation in Europe. And we see that firms, enterprises, SMEs are not always prepared to participate more in programs like MSCA, and are not always ready to integrate doctoral candidates in their organizations. They feel, and they tell us, that they think that researchers lack the right transferable skills to cooperate with industry, notably in terms of people management, project management, entrepreneurial skills, presentation, negotiation skills. This is why in the framework of MSCA, we put a particular emphasis on the development of transversal skills through training. So we will introduce a number of measures to facilitate this cross-sectoral cooperation. And as I said, we are launching a new phase of the MSCA next year, and I'd like to say a few words about this. The feedback that we have received from our stakeholders is very positive. They want us to continue the program as it is. They want us to continue funding the same type of actions, but they feel that the program is oversubscribed, and we are asked to do something to reduce this oversubscription. As it looks like the future budget of the program will most probably not be increased a lot, we will need, as we have developed or proposed, a number of measures to reduce, in fact, the demand for the program. So we will have to introduce some restrictions in accessing the program because of this oversubscription. The program will continue to be based on excellence, to be a bottom-up program, building upon a strong international dimension, reinforcing interdisciplinarity and intersectoral cooperation. We want to give in the future more guidance to supervisors so that they have a stronger mentoring role, so that they maybe have a better understanding of their role, especially when it comes to exposure beyond academia. In the future, I've heard a lot this morning about some complaints that sometimes the program is too complex. So our intention is to simplify it further, to have simpler rules, to fine-tune the definitions, to have harmonized conditions between the different actions, to strengthen as well the structuring effects on host institutions. And I've heard as well a lot about the need to reinforce synergies between programs to make it easier to combine funds. And I'm thinking in particular of the co-fund action, where we want to make a particular effort to make it easier to combine funds from MSCA and the European regional development funds or the European social funds. And this is something we are working on to make it easier as well to combine funds or activities or have joint activities, for example, with Erasmus+. We will hear after me a presentation of a project which is funded in the framework of the European University Initiative, and that's an area as well where we want to increase synergies. So with the new program, as I said, will keep its structure and its focus. So the main 5 actions that you all know already will continue to exist in the future, but under new names to make it easier to understand for people who know nothing about the program. So the current ITN, the innovative training networks, will be called doctoral networks. The individual fellowship will become postdoctoral fellowships. The RISE action will be called staff exchanges, because this is what they are. Co-fund has a clear name, so it will remain co-fund. And the European Researchers' Night will be funded under a new action called MSCA and Citizens that will fund public outreach events. As I said, one of our focus is really to promote much more intersectoral mobility, so mobility between academia and non-academic sector. So I mentioned it, we want to give maybe clearer guidance to supervisors so that they can help and mentor their researchers through maybe clearer career development plans, which should go beyond academia. When it comes to the future doctoral networks, we want as well to put a special focus on providing PhD candidates with an entrepreneurial mindset and to give them more exposure to the non-academic sector. So we want to promote much more in the future the industrial doctorates, which are doctorates where academic and non-academic partners take jointly part in the doctorate. And for that, we will provide a financial incentive. So we will increase the number of doctoral candidates compared to a normal doctoral program. And we will also lift one of the current measures which make the creation of industrial doctorate a bit complicated, which was the obligation to have a non-academic partner from another country. So now it will be much easier if the university and the industry partners are in the same countries, and we hope that it will boost the number of industrial doctorates. When it comes to post-doctoral fellowships, so the current individual fellowships, we want as well to incentivize exposure to sectors beyond academia, and we will offer the possibility to those researchers who intend to spend part of their fellowship in the non-academic sector. We will offer them this possibility and offer them an additional 6 months to their fellowship as a sign of support on our side. That's all what I wanted to say about this intersectoral mobility dimension. And my final word is not directly related to this, but it's related to the topic of the day and to the call of action, the Zagreb call of action that was launched by the Croatian presidency and that we welcome very much. This morning, the commissioner mentioned an initiative that we launched, a pilot project that we launched in 2018. And now we are collecting, let's say, the first results from this pilot project. It was what we call the Widening Fellowship. It was giving a second chance to our individual fellows who were interested to do their research in a widening country. So they had, there was not enough funding to fund them from the main list, but they were still excellent researchers. They had a second chance to receive a so-called widening fellowship. This, as you can see from the figures on this slide, has tremendously increased the participation of fellows in widening countries, and very often those are fellows returning to their countries and giving them a chance to make their country benefit from the result of their research. So we intend to continue in one way or another this widening fellowship. And as a matter of fact, we will launch at the request of the Council next year a study to analyze the brain drain phenomenon in the European Union, and we will propose appropriate solutions towards strengthening brain circulation measures in Horizon Europe. So I'd like to thank you very much for your attention, for your patience, for having joined the conference today. And I will be happy to answer any question you might have after my presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Morel, for your excellent presentation showing what's coming up next for the MSCA and the impact it's already had. We've already received a couple of questions in the chat box, but we will come back to these after all the presentations. So thank you once again. Our next speaker is Cecilia Cabello Valdis from the Spanish Foundation for Science and Technology. She's been working at the Foundation since 2002. She has expertise in science and technology policy, evaluation, and indicators. She previously worked for the Spanish Research Council and at the European Commission Joint Research Centre in its Institute for Prospective Technological Studies. She's also a member of the Bureau of the OECD's NESTI, so the National Experts for Science and Technology Indicators, and is the chair of the Iraq Standing Working Group for Human Resources and Mobility. So Ms. Cabello Valdis, welcome to the conference, and we're looking forward to your perspective on what you think are the future challenges for young researchers and how they can be addressed, including through a program such as the MSCA. The floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you can hear me. My name is Cecilia Cabello. I'm the chair of the Iraq Standing Working Group for Human Resources and Mobility. Just to explain a little bit what the Iraq group is, it's a group that depends on the European Council. It's a member state group that is comprised of member states and associated countries, and also the European Commission is member of the group, and we deal with issues that have to do with human resources and mobility, and the policies that have to do with researchers' development. So I'd like to thank the Croatian presidency for inviting me to give this short talk, because I'm going to talk a little bit about what the group has done in trying to do analysis and synergies between what the European higher education area which is a policy developed by the European Commission, and the European Research and Innovation area, which abbreviated is EA and ERA. So the Standing Working Group for Human Resources elaborated a document and a study and to try to determine the synergies between the European research area and the European higher education area. The document that we prepared and the report that we prepared was to support the discussions that were made under the first time the joint meeting held between ERAC, which is the European Research Area Committee, comprised of Director Generals of Research, and the Directorate General for Education, Youth and Sport and Culture of the European Commission and of the member states, DG ERAC. And this was done last year under the Finnish presidency. The document that we prepared faced on the human resources dimension of these two policy areas, because obviously the policy areas of EDA is much more than human resources, and of course of the European higher education area is more than just human resources, but we wanted to focus on that. So the main messages that we found in the document, or the synergies that we thought, were several. We thought that EDA and EA share the same knowledge base of universities, research organizations in the EU, and that carry out an important responsibility that have to do with research, innovation, research education, especially doctoral students, and training of undergraduate and master students. Just in last year, or a little bit over last year, data tells us that there's 2 million full-time equivalent researchers, and that 40% of these researchers are working in higher education and research centers. So, thus, the higher education system is fundamental in making ERA, the European Research Area, collaborative, competitive, and successful. And that both frameworks, the two policy areas that I'm talking about, we've deemed that it's necessary that they be clear, synergetic, and interoperable in their measures and the policies that they define. And we think this is especially important because specifically the European Research Area has defined priority 3, the third priority in its roadmap, as an open labor market for researchers. Also, the higher education area and ERA are strongly linked through the student force, obviously, that are educated through the research experiences and the different levels of their career, and particularly in the doctoral levels at the universities. And so in the first phase of the research career, it allows to access advanced level research careers outside and within academia. So this is what the dimension we were talking about, mobility. It's not just within the higher education centers. EDA and EA share a need to promote virtual, blended, and geographic mobility, mainly within Europe. So we're talking again about here with the issue of the conference, which is brain circulation, but also beyond. This mobility should not only be an exception anymore, and it should become the general rule as a normal component of all European researchers and academia curricula and their students all over Europe. So the motto that we think that should be operated is that studying, researching, and working like home. This what we're trying to say is students, researchers, and academics and other higher education research institutions and professionals should benefit from the same conditions, rights, duties, rewards as within their own institution. So we're talking about services, pensions, rewards, everything that has to do with the employment of the researcher or the development of the research careers. For some reason, my screen won't go on to the next slide. Oh, here. Okay. So basically, beyond 2020, as you all know, there's a development talks of the future ERA and how that should be focused, and there's also conversations of obviously in the context of the New Horizon Europe. We try to define a common agenda for both of these policy areas, ERA and EA, and we think that they should work to three common goals. The first one is supporting highly competent and socially responsible students, researchers, academics, and higher education and research institutes, professionals in Europe throughout their working life. Another goal is achieving effective mobility of students, researchers, academics, and higher education and research institute professionals within Europe, to and from Europe. And also, we believe that creating a more common human resources standards in general for higher education and research institutes in Europe and striving for a common European identity for students, researchers, academics, and also for higher education and research professionals in general. So this is what we identified as the goals that the two policy areas should develop. And with respect to specific, going a little bit down, we identified different shared challenges within these policy realms, and also offered suggestions of tools and ideas to facilitate the links between ERA and EA in relation to the following aspects: supporting highly competent and socially responsible students, researchers, academics, and professionals. What are we talking about here? We're talking about addressing the mismatch between skills in Europe, what skills the researchers need, and what the current staff need, higher education staff needs. And we want to translate this into a well-educated workforce with strong transversal, digital, and innovative skills. This is one of the challenges. Some of the ideas that we offered in the document, which you can access, I can provide the link later, on fostering for this challenge is fostering the interest and giving incentives for the uptake of intersectoral mobility, of innovation, of risk culture, and in general to improve the collaboration between employers and the development of the educational programs. Another challenge in this area of the first bullet point is facilitating lifelong learning and career development and services mechanisms for the European workforces. Obviously, we're talking about research and academics. So we think, for example, to strengthen the engagement of cross-country collaboration in the Euraccess network as one example, and to raise the capability throughout the Euraccess network to enable careers to build on the different levels of development of skills and services that they need. Another area that we thought was important was building an innovative and collaborative spirit with responsible research, professionals' attitude in students, researchers, academics, and staff. Here, we think that strengthening and modernizing the innovative doctoral training principles, considering that doctoral education is a continuation of the research from the higher education area to the ERA area. So this is also important. Another issue we think is important is incentives to uptake open science principles and methods by students and by staff. In the second bullet point of effective mobility and research, what are the challenges that we thought would be important? For example, the effective mobility, or the whole issue of the conference and then of the discussions today of brain circulation, attracting talent towards Europe and within Europe, eliminating the socioeconomic, the cultural, legal barriers, and that hamper mobility in general. So what do we think here? We think initiatives like the European universities is a good pillar to do this, to promote this challenge and to succeed in this area. to keep a common approach towards mobility and welcoming students, like it's already been addressed by your axis, and a better coordination general between national, bilateral, and European funding, which was mentioned also by other speakers this morning. Common standards for higher education is also another issue that we think is important. So how can we address this? For example, the Charter and Code, evaluating the Charter and Code and the Erasmus Charter to see if there's synergies among these codes. Specifically, the group that I chair is currently looking at the Charter and Code and see how we can better adapt it to the academics, to the research, to the teaching, to gender issues, and to open science. So this is being done. So in conclusion, I just want to sum up the fact that this is the first approach that we try to do in the group to find the synergies between the two, between the European research area and the European higher education area, and there's still work to be need. And as I said before, this is part of, we want this to feed into the debate of the new communication that's going to be published by the European Commission, and how the programs are developed, especially when we're talking about synergies between funding. So I just want to thank you all for your attention, and thank again for the presidency for inviting me to this conference. And I hope if you want any further questions, I will hope to answer them at the end of the panel. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kabir, Valdis, for your presentation and your view of these, how we connect in the future, the European research area, the European education area, and your view of some of the main challenges and in a way goals that there should be in the next decade to try and create synergies between different initiatives and to really try and exactly as you said, address some of for the new researchers to be socially responsible, to be mobile, to be for the whole system to be more inclusive. These are some of the issues that you underlined. A common European identity as well being very important. So I think these are good topics for discussion if we'll have any questions from the audience. But let's move on to our next speaker. So our next and third speaker and final speaker in this session, and then we'll open the floor for discussions, is Professor Leandra Braniesz-Markic, who is the Vice Rector for Research and Innovation at the University of Split. She leads a research group for physics, quantum matter at the Faculty of Science at the University of Split. She has authored more than 45 scientific publications, and she was one of the founders of the Technology Transfer Office at the university and has managed it for more than 8 years. Currently, as a Vice Rector, she's responsible for research and innovation projects in Split, including significant investments in research infrastructure. Today she will be also presenting the role of the University of Split in one of the European Commission funded European University Alliances, since the University of Split is part of the European University of the Seas Alliance, where she leads, Professor Braniesz-Markic leads the work package which connects education, research, business, society, and the environment. So we're looking forward to your perspective on the future in the next decade of the challenges that are ahead and how the research community and your university will be playing its part in addressing some of those challenges. Professor Braniesz-Markic, the floor is yours.
To participate in the panel, giving the perspective of a European University Alliance. University of Split is a member of European University of the Seas. It's one of the 17 selected alliances in the first European University School. This initiative aims to transform the future of education in Europe. By connecting pockets of excellence, as Commissioner Gabriel mentioned this morning, the initiative seeks to bring together a new generation of Europeans that are able to cooperate across languages, sectors, and disciplines to address societal challenges and skill shortages in Europe. This picture shows the Kickoff Event, which gathered the pioneering institutions, European ministers, academics, and students to discuss the vision of higher education in Europe. And in order to discuss how European universities can provide better opportunities for the development of research careers throughout all regions of Europe, I will first shortly introduce our alliance. We are an alliance of 6 coastal universities from University of Cadiz, University of Western Britain in Brest, University of Kiel, Gdańsk, Split, and Malta. Together we unite over 120,000 students, almost 17,000 staff, of which more than 10,000 academics. We are strongly embedded in our socioeconomic sectors, which is shown by our 32 associate partners that comprise research centers, enterprises, cities, public entities, NGOs, and international clusters of excellence. Being coastal universities, our driving force is the expertise in marine and maritime dimension, and this includes teaching, research, and transfer. But actually, we are building an alliance of the universities as a whole, because we really have excellence in many different fields. As our motto says, living sustainable by, from, and with the sea, sustainability is one of our key pillars in our approach. We really want to build a resilient, anti-fragile, and innovative pan-European institution that can become a role model to other universities, and in particular engaging students, academics, researchers, and entrepreneurs in international teams for solving important social challenges and creating new knowledge. And as was also mentioned before, future challenges of young researchers require increasingly working across sectors in international and multidisciplinary teams, within and outside academia. So how to enable such development within European universities? We are considering different approaches. Currently, we are still getting to know our research and expertise potential to the full. Our internal database of research groups is growing daily and now comprises more than 160 research groups. It will be a basis for effective brain linkage. It will also lead to future joint research, which will also be facilitated by the internal seed funding that we are developing. Sharing resources is one of our key principles, and this means services, databases, infrastructure. We are still in the process of mapping them, but eventually a young researcher will have the possibility to access the resources from around the Alliance. We are also strongly simulating the mobility of all our students and staff, but not just for teaching, but also for professional development and research. At the same time, fostering multilingualism and multiculturalism. So far, this was mostly achieved by Erasmus Plus funds, but in future, we are really hoping that we can use the MSCA to achieve these goals. Due to our initial marine and maritime orientation, we have planned as a pilot a joint PhD study in this field. Within this program, we wish to explore the topic of industrial doctorates, and there we would have a strong involvement also of industry, which would then in long term also secure the sustainability of such a program. And we think that MSCA ITNs could serve as a vehicle to achieve these goals. It is crucial for PhDs to gain relevant skills outside of academia, where they will be considered attractive outside academia. To that end, we have applied in a Erasmus Plus strategic partnership project, CU-DOC, preparing doctoral students in marine sciences for careers out of academia in a European context. The goal is, of course, to increase the employability of our doctorate holders by giving visibility to the diversity of career paths, which is not always clear when someone chooses this profession, and identifying valuable transferable skills. Some were mentioned before, but depending on the field, there will be others. And then adjusting training to better fit the diversity of employment opportunities. And also strengthening links all the time between university and industry. The experience which we hope to gain from this project could then be transferred to other fields, increasing the overall quality of doctoral education within our alliance. Then, in order to further strengthen the research and innovation dimension, a dedicated Horizon Swaps call was opened several months ago, and actually yesterday we submitted our proposal, Research EU. One of the main pillars is strengthening the human capital. The CEU Academy will provide regular virtual trainings, webinars and workshops, through which skilled experts and excellent research from the Alliance will transfer their knowledge and expertise to other researchers. It will be a great opportunity for all the young US researchers. And some of the topics that we will pilot are digital skills, open science, innovation, and entrepreneurial skills. Also, we'll deal with sustainable research and innovation practices. The pandemic has affected, of course, our experimental research, but also we consider it as an opportunity to join forces and figure out how our cooperation can make us anti-fragile, that is better despite all the shocks and unforeseen events. And we see that, of course, it's crucial for the researchers to gain international experiences, a lot of them physical, but really it's not necessary that the mobility is only physical. And in that respect, throughout that project, we will explore the remote work and remotization of infrastructure to set ground for remote access to some of our equipment as one of the key factors for maintaining lab and equipment-based research work during times of unforeseen events. Our approach has also a strong transdisciplinary component and mission-based, and we are going to explore it further throughout these following 3 years for a variety of models, from living labs, hackathons, science shops, marketplaces, and citizen science activities. This will enable our researchers and students to enter in the new relationship with stakeholders, primarily businesses and society, and thereby by gaining valuable skills for their development of their research careers. So at the end, to conclude, we believe that European universities have great potential to address future challenges of young researchers, and MSCA is an important vehicle to achieve these ambitions. Here you see our governing board comprising rectors, vice-rectors, students of the 6 universities, and they have shown their commitment to CEU mission and objectives, including creating research-friendly environment. We all need further support from EU and at national level, and in that respect, all the talk about synergies is very welcome. So I thank you for the attention. I'm looking forward to the questions and hope to see you in CEU.
And we also emphasized in your presentations linking higher education, so universities, research communities, and employers, and generally this sense that new researchers should be combining a whole lot of different components. So being socially responsible, being mobile, being inclusive, being European, and having a strong European identity. So it was very interesting to hear your different perspectives and to see the links between them. We did receive a few questions, so let me just go into some of those. In fact, the questions, well, okay, there are quite a lot of questions for you, Ms. Morel, about the new version, post-2020 version of the MSCA. So if you don't mind, we will start with a couple of questions here. Well, a couple of participants asked, so the now individual fellowships are turning into the postdoctoral fellowships, and the question is, does that mean, unlike now, that you do need to have a completed PhD in order to be eligible for this? So it's quite a technical question, but it's obviously quite important as well. So would you mind clarifying whether there is any change with regards to the individual fellowships eligibility?
Yeah. Yes, indeed. For in the current situation, you can have or you can obtain an individual fellowship even without having a PhD degree. Actually, in fact, about 10% of all our individual fellows do not have a PhD. But as we need to introduce some measure to reduce the demand, unfortunately, we need to, as I mentioned, to introduce some restriction, and this will be one of them. So indeed, it will be obligatory to have a PhD degree in order to apply for a postdoctoral fellowship.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. I'm afraid that people won't be very happy about that, but thank you for at least clarifying, and that's a clear answer. There was another question, which if while you're still here, just to clarify, a question from I'm sorry, let me see. Yeah, from Rob Smith, regarding the national industry academic collaboration, what will this look like, and how will it be combined with the MSCA requirement of international mobility? Would you mind clarifying that as well?
Yeah, I will clarify. By the way, and I think I made it clear during my presentation, those are only proposals. And so we are still in the preparation mode. We are still discussing those proposals with the member states, and nothing is set in stone. So those are the Commission proposal, but we still need to go into the preparation of the work program. We need to submit it to the member states. So the final version, let's say, of the future program will only be known at the beginning of next year. So to answer the question about the industrial doctoral program, which we want to promote very much in the future, it will still require international mobility. So there is a condition now which makes it quite difficult for universities, is that they need to have their industrial partner from another country. Now it will be possible in the future, that's our proposal, to have the non-academic partner within the same country, because usually universities have close cooperation with industry which are located in their region, but that will not have an impact on the mobility rules. So PhD candidates will continue to be recruited from all over Europe, from all over the world, and the same mobility rules will apply.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. We also received the results of our poll for this panel, which was, do you think that MSCA contributes to increasing structural impact to foster excellence on the national level in the widening countries by co-funding activities? And the relative majority thinks, so 42% think that the MSCA contributes a lot to this. Almost 40% say that it moderately contributes, and 20% say that it does not contribute enough. So I think there's a clear sense that the MSCA is key in this element. So I think that's a positive, again, the sense of the recognition of the MSCA's role in impacting research excellence. And maybe from the perspective of Croatia, so I'd be interested to see how you've also had an interesting element of basically creating synergies between different programs yourself. So through the European Universities Alliance, through Horizon, and through strategic partnerships as well, through Erasmus+. So again, that's an interesting perspective. So could you just say a bit more about how you work strategically on trying to use these different opportunities to build your research capacities?
Yes. So really, we have 10-year goals to really build a pan-European institution. It requires a lot of effort, a lot of funding, and taking into account very different elements. So the first Erasmus Plus project is just the start, but we are creating a structure to last. And so it was really great to have the opportunity in Horizon swaps to try to strengthen this research dimension, and we are going to continue to do it, because we did not get the funding for the research itself so far. It's all coordination and support action, but we really need to connect our researchers to start working on solving real problems and creating new knowledge. And for that, I mean, MSCA would be a great opportunity, but also other Horizon projects and all different sorts of funding. I mean, we need to digitalize more our institutions. So whatever is out there, we are really very eager to grow this alliance stronger and stronger in the long run. And so we need a lot of these different elements to make it work. Thank you
very much. Maybe to come back to you also, Ms. Morel, you mentioned about a planned study on brain drain, and this was a topic that we spoke a lot about this morning, and about this risk. So brain circulation is the goal, but we also want to avoid brain drain and have strategies to address those. Can you tell us a bit more about what is planned and when we can see the results of this?
As I mentioned, at the request of the Council, this study will be launched at the beginning of next year. So it's planned to be launched at the beginning of 2021, so I don't expect the results to be known before the end of 21 or maybe beginning of 22. And on the basis of this study, we will propose a number of actions within MSCA, but not only, because many other programs, Erasmus and many other programs, national programs as well, can introduce measures to counter brain drain.
Okay, thank you very much for that clarification as well. And there was a question this morning, which was It was a tricky question. If you don't mind me asking it, you may have heard it during the discussion, which was one of our participants was saying, well, did the MSCA respond adequately to the COVID-19 crisis by with regards to the flexibility for MSCA fellows? So it was a difficult question at the time, and we said we'd need to reopen it in the afternoon. So I'm sorry to have to ask it, but would you mind commenting on
No.
Since it was a question from the audience, I have to ask it. So yes.
Oh, no. You have to ask it, and I'm happy to be able to provide an answer, because we've been in contact with many fellows, with universities. We've been in contact as well with the Marie Curie Alumni Association exactly on that topic. The issue is that it's not possible, according to the Horizon 2020 general rules, to increase the maximum amount of the grant. However, we are trying to be as flexible as possible, and so that to ensure continuity within the existing legal framework. So all the fellows and all our researchers which are in a difficult situation have been asked to contact their project officer at the research executive agency and see how individually measures can be taken to completely rearrange or to reorganize their research work. For example, if research activities cannot take place as planned, we're completely open to a complete reorganization. For example, activities that require physical presence, for example, experiments in lab, may be postponed until the confinement measures are over. They can be replaced with teleworking and with other form of remote work from anywhere in the world. So we don't pay attention anymore to the mobility rules. If activities such as training, publication, or patent application can be moved, there's no problem to do that. It's possible to do part-time to work on a part-time mode, of course, if the fellow agrees. We've been as well very flexible in accepting that some of the foreseen deliverables are delayed or even are not delivered at all, and we would fully understand that the researcher is not able to carry out exactly his or her research activities as planned. We have as well told the recruiting institutions that they can use some of the money that we give them as institutional costs to maintain the salary of their researchers during their suspension periods if the contract needs to be suspended. And of course, we call on all our researchers to contact the research executive agency to find tailor-made solutions. We know that for most cases, in most cases, solutions have been found. We might have a few cases with whom we are still working to see how we can reorganize their work.
Thank you very much for the clarification. I think that was important to communicate as well, that you're working on a range of different ways in which to address some of these challenges. I am sorry for for our speakers, Ms. Kabir, Valdis, and Professor Valdis. I have some more questions for Claire Morel now from the audience, so I'll have to, while you're still here, share a few more questions. So we've received another question from Brian Cahill. So is it fair to say that ITNs and co-funds through their cohort training programs have much more synergy with, for example, Erasmus Plus or the European Higher Education Area elements, while the individual fellowships are much more like a typical research and innovation project? Would you agree with that statement?
I'm sure that my colleagues can answer that question as well, but it's true that it would be easier to create synergies between Erasmus Plus and an MSCA at the level of the ITNs or the future doctoral programs or the co-fund projects. We already see examples. In fact, I think this year we have selected one or two new co-fund projects for doctoral programs, which are based on the European University Alliance. So this is already taking place, and this is we want to promote very much in the future. So I think I would say yes, exactly. I think those synergies are probably more easier at the level of co-fund projects and ITN or doctoral programs, yes. I'm sure my colleagues who are working on synergies between the European education area and the European research area have views as well.
But would any of the other speakers like to come in on that question as well, or Cecilia, perhaps?
Yes, I can make a short comment on that. Basically, I think there's two levels. It's the policy level and what objectives we want to seek, and then the instrumental level. And definitely, like my colleague Clara just said, I think the instrumental level, it's already happening. There's things that are happening in reality with these synergies, but we have to work more to see how we can better bridge the two policy areas together and find, maybe even think of new instruments that might be needed to make that those synergies a reality. So with existing measures, there's definitely things that are being done. So I agree, but I think there's more can be done also. So thank you.
Excellent. And we have another question. Two more questions, in fact. So coming back to this question of the changes of the individual fellowships. So this is a question from Mustafa Munir Shawrao from the Marie Curie Alumni Association, who says that the individual fellowships, it's a unique type of grant which actually helps fellows to become independent researchers. The fact that they are an IF is the type of project where fellows manage their own projects, and it's quite different to a traditional postdoctoral program. So the question is, why change a program which is so well recognized and has such a value? Again, difficult question, I'm afraid.
But our intention is not to change. No, sorry, no problem. I mean, our intention is not at all to change the individual fellowships by changing the name. The name, I mean, we try to give new names in order to make them more intuitive and more easier to understand, especially for people who do not know anything about the program. So when you say, ITN, IF, RISE, it's not always clear what the program is doing and which target groups it's addressing. Now we will talk about doctoral programs. We will talk about postdoctoral fellowships. So it's not because we are changing the name, and as I said, we want the main features, the main priorities of the program to remain. There will be probably a change, but again, it's a proposal from the Commission and it needs to be approved by the member states. The intention is for the individual fellowships to concentrate on a younger generation of researchers, so to introduce what we call a scientific age. Because again, we have such a high number of applications for the individual fellowship. For every call, we have 10,000 applications, and we select 15% of them. It's a huge burden on our evaluation system. And we need to find ways of, if the budget is not increased, we need to find ways, unfortunately, to limit this demand. So it's true that the intention will be to keep the same features, but to concentrate on the younger generation of researchers, at least for this action. For other actions, like the RISE, the staff exchanges, will continue to be open to researchers at all stages of their career.
Okay. Thank you very much for that clarification. And in fact, regarding the RISE program, we've got a question from Sylvia Sell, who just asked if you could provide a few more details about the planned evolution and changes to the RISE scheme.
Yeah. So for the RISE scheme, I didn't mention it because I concentrated very much on the intersectoral dimension, but it's true that RISE is a wonderful tool because it's a staff exchange program for not only researchers, but anybody involved in research. It can be management staff, it can be technical staff, it can be anyone, even from the administration. And the main change that we will introduce in this action will be the possibility to have academic exchanges within the projects. Up until now, it was necessary to have cooperation between academic and the non-academic world. Now it will also be possible to have exchanges between academia as long as there is an interdisciplinary dimension. So that will be the main change in that action.
Okay. Thank you very much for that clarification. I think there are no more questions, and I think we are reaching the time. We are reaching the end of the session. So I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you all very much for taking the time to join us today, and for your great presentations, which opened different perspectives, but actually with very similar themes about where you see the next decade in terms of what we'll be expecting from young researchers and and how to connect them to other sectors of society. So thank you very much for that, and for clarifying the plan changes and evolution, and what will also stay the same in the MSCA in the next decade. So many thanks for joining us once again.
You.
And I look forward to seeing you again soon, I hope.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.